probably stomp on my head. Kia ora tātou. Te mea tuatahi e te tokone ngā wakaritenga mō tātou te aiahi nei. No reira e koroma koutou e wakatū te arawata ki te rongorawi tēnei wā ka nui ngā mi kia koutou. Huri no kia koutou katoa, kua tai mai runga te kaupapa ka nui ngā mi kia koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa. Well, thank you, Ngaio, for asking me back. And he put me at the very end, and I'm not sure it's because I went overtime last time that I can just talk for as long as I want to. Or maybe because everyone's getting sleepy now, they won't take too much notice. But the first thing he asked me to do is to give an overview of the day and to make a few comments before actually presenting the things that I've written on this piece of paper here. And there's sort of a PowerPoint, and I haven't really got a clue about PowerPoints, and so whoever's managing the thing can just sort of flick the things through when they approximately seem to be what I'm talking about. But the first thing that I would say about today was what's really struck me has been the passion of the people that have stood up in front of us and spoken. And that's spectacular. And when you've got passionate people working and passionate people working together, yes, there's going to be progress. But just a warning about passion, if you don't keep feeding it, it burns out. And often what's happened in the past is our really passionate people have burnt themselves to a frazzle and we've lost them. And so for those wonderful people that have spoken today, from Ngaio right back to the very beginning, we've got to treasure those people and look after them. And the best way to, in actual fact, support them is to take notice, to make things happen. The other thing that came through to me today, Ngāti Kahungunu, you are rich in leaders. Not just the old people that we've always looked to, but those of you younger ones coming through. And so that's an asset that anyone would envy, and that's an asset which will actually ensure the future is going to be one of progress. The next thing that I've written down is urgency. You know, we've heard lots of Kay talking about the biodiversity decline, and Hawke's Bay is a biodiversity black area. So much, there's few parts in the country that have been changed as much, and what we've got left, we've got to treasure. But we'll talk all about climate change and all those sorts of things here. I like what Kataraina said, the word, you know, tokens went out with glass milk bottles. All this token stuff, and Ngaio was hinting at it too. We're not going to accept tokens anymore. The issues are too serious. We've got to get on with things, stop stuffing around and get on with it. And I think lots of people were saying that. A key to making progress is working together. Ngaio mentioned divide and rule. We've got to ban that strategy. Why is it that people who mostly agree spend all their time disagreeing with each other? That sort of disagreement is a luxury we can no longer afford. So as an iwi, from Wairarapa right through to Mahia, we have to make sure we work together. And when we present to the public, all those issues have been solved before we got to the presentation. I take Roger's point about reaching out, that so many Māori in Hawke's Bay don't go to the marae. If that's the only place where we do Māori business, we're going to miss out on a big number of people. So we do have to get out there, go to our kohanga, go to our ganghikos or wherever, and listen, not to tell people, but to listen to what they have to say and bring with us a message of hope. If we listen to each other and work together, we can make things better for everybody. I was impressed how Tai Whenua, you are planning and working together. don't get far if we turn up somewhere and fire from the hip. The hard work that tai whenua are doing is often not much appreciated in terms of planning, working out strategies, doing their background, engaging people who are expert in their fields. That's how we progress. That's how we prevent people from ignoring us, because our case is too strong and too well put together. So that came through very well. And of course, leadership. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about leadership. We don't get anywhere unless we have leaders. We've got lots of managers. Managers manage the status quo, and they tend to resist change. Our future is more and more challenging. We need change, and we need leaders who can actually make that happen. And so, as I say, celebrate the leaders we have in this room and those who are not here. Build them up, support them, keep them honest, and work together. And all of those things, I saw all that coming through in our presentations. And so to all the presenters, congratulations. I'm absolutely enthralled with what you're doing. So now we're going to get on to what I've written down here. And some of it I'll change as we go, because in actual fact, as a result of what we hear, I'm not so much in touch at the moment with what's happening around here, because I've been working mostly for Kahutia, and Kahutia is at a standing point at the moment. What I've really been doing is running a series of wānanga in Wairoa with regard to rongoa. And the aim was through the rongoa to connect with the local people to the vision of Kahutia, particularly in addressing the issues around the Wairoa River. The first patient for somebody who practices the rongoa is the whenua itself. Through the rongoa is a clear pathway to heal the whenua and the river. Given the complexity of the issues that are involved, it's a good starting point. Bringing the Wairoa River back to health is a very big challenge, well beyond the scope of what the government, the regional council and district council and all the experts that advise them and all the managers that lead the projects that have been set up to address the issues involved are doing at the present time. For all the reports that have been written and the millions already spent, things continue to get worse. What is needed is a different approach, a different way of thinking. What we are saying is that the new way is in fact tapping into a very old way of doing things. The mātauranga and the wisdom of living with the land that Māori have grown up with over 1,000 years. And that's very much what we heard about in that talk with regard to maramataka. Maramataka isn't about looking up on the internet what is the right day. It's about getting out there and taking notice. That's where mātauranga comes from. It comes from the land. And it's the experience of 1,000 years doing just that. You know what, thank you for what you said today. You really lifted our game. Who knows the land better than those who belong to the land? It's time to listen and to learn again. There is a lot at stake. Rongoa Māori is about healing the land and healing the people who belong to the land. That's our starting point. Kahutia is about putting a cloak back on Papatūānuku. The whole of Kahungunu, from Mahia right through to the Wairarapa, has serious problems resulting from erosion and degradation of land and the resulting issues with water supply and quality. The memories of the Havelock North water pollution problem still lurk in the back of people's memories, even though it seems for many the memories are fading fast. More than 250,000 hectares needs to be put back into trees, not for forestry to make money, but to heal the land and care for the water. The Hawke's Bay economy, and I said this last year, depends on the fertility of its lands and the produce it grows. That is increasingly at risk as the health of the landscape and the supply and quality of the water that sustains the production continues to decline. There is a lot of talking about that and a lot of denial about how serious the situation is, and Ngaio illustrated that. And what it could become, even more worrying, seems to be a lack of the long-term planning to address the issues involved. Planning for the next few hundred years, not just for the lifetimes of the people who are currently the decision makers. What is needed to ensure the long-term sustainability of the local economy is planning that looks forward hundreds of years. It is too easy to keep so busy focusing on the current issues and current needs to look into the more distant future and plan to provide for those who will inherit the outcomes of the decisions the decision makers are making now. And that's what Kahuti is about. It's a long-term plan. By recloaking Papa Tuanuku, she will begin to recover, and the water that flows from her and through her will start to be clean again and in good supply. It's worth quoting Guthrie Smith's book on Tūtira, which was published in 1921. The countryside has been transformed from a sponge to a slate. Our present problems are the direct result of how the land has been used. We have done a good job of knocking out the land's ability to heal itself. Kahuti is about restoring the healing power, the balance, so that the land will be well again. This is a bit, we'll see, I'll say it anyway. Kahuti was lauded when it was first launched, and the regional council and government promised to support the support needed to make it happen. It is a partnership between Ngāti Kahungunu and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Kahungunu took the lead and invested heavily in taking the first steps to get it started. However, we are still waiting for the commitments made by council and government to be realised. Things are still in the talking stage, even after more than a year. A lot of time and resources have gone into making applications for the funding said to be available, answering the questions and going to meetings and reapplying again and again, and still people are waiting. And I do acknowledge that when you're dealing with public money, the whole process isn't a quick process. You've got to actually follow the way things are done, all the accountabilities that have to be put in place. But we are dealing with an emergency, a very serious situation. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to get on with it. We've been mucking around, filling out forms for too long, you know. And I do appreciate people who manage public funds, but it is an emergency. And that means we've got less excuses for taking our time. So that's where Kahutia sits at the moment. We wait for the talking to be finished and the resources to be unlocked so we can really get on with it. Hawke's Bay needs to forget about building dams and building infrastructure to sustain current productivity and focus on the big issues, the real issues, healing the land, recloaking Papatūānuku. What's the use of a super port and a wonderful roading network when the land is losing its ability to provide the products it's built to service? The focus of this presentation is Wairoa. We've got some nice pictures of Wairoa River somewhere. Oh, there we are. That's something, isn't it? Beautiful. Just hold that one there for a minute. And the wānanga that Kahutia funded and supported in Wairoa. And I acknowledge the taiwhenua of the Trust Board there, Waikanamoana Wairoa Trust Board, and all the support that came there. Those wānanga demonstrated a way of doing things that could work throughout the whole of Hawke's Bay. The environment's best protection isn't the government or the councils. They can only do so much. What is really needed is that the people who live on the land and draw life from it take the lead in caring for it. The aim of the wānanga was to connect local people back to the whenua in a way that they not only know it better and see its needs, but start to understand how they can bring it back to health. More than anything, that means tapping into the old knowledge, the mātauranga of tūpuna who once walk the land. And that's where, again, go back to our maramataka. Wairoa was chosen for the first series of wānanga because that's where the things are most serious. The Wairoa River is flooding more, and the floods are both eroding the riverbanks and dumping millions of tons of sediment into the sea. The immediate visible effect is that the riverbanks are eroding rapidly. They're just disappearing before people's eyes. Each flood takes more of the whenua out to sea. In Wairoa, that's where most of the marae are and the urupa, and there is a real possibility that some of them will fall into the river. Already work is happening to uplift some koiwi and relocate the urupa they rested in. The way things are going, it is only a matter of time before it may be necessary even to relocate some marae. Things are equally serious offshore, and Shade could tell us more about this one. The amount of sediment being dumped on the seafloor between the Wairoa river mouth and Mahia is already affecting the fish nurseries. That has an effect on the fisheries. Kahungunu's main source of income at the moment comes from its fisheries. That income benefits every marae in the region and the many activities that they support. So everybody is going to bear the cost because of the decline of that Wairoa River. So it might seem a bit strange to start dealing with that by talking about rongoa, until we actually understand what rongoa is. The problems of the Wairoa River don't begin on the riverbanks as the muddy waters sweep past the town into the sea. They begin up in the hills where the water comes from. That's where the rongoa is also to be found. No point on looking on the banks of the Wairoa River for rongoa. Most of it is just willow trees and silt. And that's what you see in that photo. I think there's a couple more photographs like that. Can we flick through some more? Or have we had them already? As you can see, I'm not a professional presenter. I'm just a sort of sit in the bush and talk to people. Now, in the former years, the Wairoa district had many species of trees and plants, and they were widespread and readily available. Many of them were used as rongoa or for kai. People lived off the land, not just from pigs and deer, as many do today, but for a whole range of foods. Tuna, koura, kākahi, various birds, and a whole range of seeds and berries, roots and other plants that supplement their diet. When they were thirsty, the water came from streams and springs. They were safe and they were clean and safe to drink from. If anybody was injured or sick, the ngāhere provided the runga that was needed. People moved around to follow the food to the ngāhere when the certain berries were ready, or the birds fed from feeding on them, and not just kereru, you know. There were lots of birds that people ate in those days. Kāka apparently tastes better than kereru, and kiwi are very nice to eat, so they tell me. Tui, all those sorts they were all kai, you know, because they were so abundant. To the rivers and the repo when the tuna and inanga ran, to the gardens when it was time to plant or weed or to harvest and store. The landscape provided all their needs, materials for the homes they lived in, the clothes they wore, the tools they needed for every aspect of life. Now that doesn't happen now. Most people live in town or away from Wairoa. Most people have lost touch with the world or the forest, and even those who go to the bush to hunt for kai are mostly focused on looking for sign to tell them where the game is. And even for them, it's no longer possible to live off only what the land can provide. Now, the consequences is that few people today have an in-depth understanding of the ngāhere. And they don't need to. They live in town, and their kai comes from the shop and their rongoa from the doctor or the hospital. So how can 21st century people who have a town way of living learn rongoa? How realistic is it to try and learn when people aren't sure which plant is which or where to find them because they never had the chance to learn from the old people? So the aim of our wānanga was reconnect people back to the whenua and to the old way of living. Not to expect people to live that way again, but to give them an insight into the world from which the knowledge of the rongoa came. That's the starting point in learning rongoa as understood by the old people, not modern understandings which are often mostly about medicines. There are some aspects of rongoa that can only be learned that way. And again, we go back to our talk on maramataka. Maramataka isn't about looking it up on Google. It's about going out there and listening and looking and taking notice and remembering. And that's how you learn rongoa. The trees will teach you. That's exactly how it is. And so with our wānanga, we're taking people into the bush so that they could hear the trees talking. So the big question we have to ask ourselves and ask the people, be they counsellors or scientists or our next door neighbour, is this: how can you heal the land when you are a stranger to the land? The land is not a resource to be harvested or used whenever you see fit, nor is the water just there for the taking, regardless of others' needs or what downstream effects it might have. The land is alive. Papa Tuanuku, the Earth Mother, and the water is the blood that flows through her veins, giving life. If she is well, we can't expect to be well. That way of thinking is a key starting point in understanding rongoa and understanding how we heal this land. Now that's very important when we're trying to work together to deal with the issues that face Hawke's Bay. The erosion which is changing the land so much and making more and more of it unusable, and the water that we all need to survive. That understanding has been lacking in the way Hawke's Bay has gone about using and managing the land. And that's probably an understatement. The land has been thinged, used without respect. Too many people have acted more like slave masters and extracted from the land as much as they could squeeze, rather than treating it with care and looking to the long-term future. Land use is governed by the Resource Management Act. The land and all it contains is seen as a resource to be managed, carefully of course to minimise and mitigate the effects of human activity, but not as a mother that gives and sustains life. That's what we have to change if we are going to have a future, treating the whenua as a mother, not a resource. And that change needs to be led by people who belong to the land and know it. The land has been here for tens of millions of years before the first human set foot. So how is it we presume we know what is best for it? Has anybody stopped and asked the land what is best for it? That's where tikanga comes in. It's a way of opening the door to enable the whenua itself to give direction. The land speaks through the people that have been there longest, who know it in a way that only people who have lived with the land know it. And that just doesn't mean Māori. I've already made mention of Guthrie Smith. His book should be compulsory reading for everybody that gets elected to the regional council. He wrote the book after living on the land and caring for it for 60 years and noticing the changes in the land as things happened, and how they affected the land and all that belonged to it. Many of the things that we're talking about now were all discussed in detail nearly 100 years ago. Why are we still having the same conversations now and still not learning from the mistakes that have long since been made and still being made? You know, Hawke's Bay's got less excuses than anybody because we've got Guthrie Smith's book. How many have read it? Wānanga are not just about learning and passing on knowledge. They're also about waking up knowledge, helping people to remember things they learned long ago that still sleep in the backs of their memories. That's what the rongoa, wānanga and wairoa were about, waking up knowledge that was learnt in the past that is today very much needed. Not just the rongoa to deal with the many health problems that today beset us, but also the rongoa to heal the land and water. So those wānanga made a good start, and just hope we can build on them. Things are stalled at the moment because kahutia is on hold for now, but we're hoping that's going to come back to life. Kahutio is about Kahungunu taking the lead in healing the whenua, putting the cloak back on Papa Tuanuku. That's what's needed, leadership. Leadership is not about telling people what to do. A leader is a person who has a vision and is able to bring people together to build a pathway to make that vision a reality, to make it happen. These days we are surrounded by managers, people who work to keep things as they are, rather than upsetting people by bringing in change and all the uncertainty that can come with that, even if the change is desperately needed. Now that sort of management is not good enough today because there are big changes happening that are beyond our control. Climate change, for instance, we've heard a lot about that today. Look at Moana and those homes getting wrecked by the sea. We need to tell those in leadership positions that if they are not prepared to lead, to step aside and let somebody who is take their place. Hawke's Bay needs visionary leaders, not managers who preserve the status quo because it suits them best. Council elections are coming up. Māori traditionally haven't been good at voting. That's the first change that has to happen. This year, make sure that the Māori vote is so strong that it can't be ignored. They can get away with a lot these days because Māori are not going to bother to vote. So if you want to get back into council or parliament, don't say things that will upset people. In other words, don't take too much notice of Māori. We see it all the time. That's got to change. 65,000 Ngāti Kahungunu. Just imagine what that would do if every single person voted. The second change is to put up candidates who are both visionary and leaders, people who work for the people and the whenua, not just to advance their own ambitions, and then vote for them. So we've got our candidate here. Hopefully we're going to get one up in Wairoa. You know, put people at that table, and then you can really demand, you can tip the balance. So that's a challenge, eh? That's achievable. We've got the passion, let's make it happen. And we've got to get out to our communities and wake up those people that normally we never actually go to see. We need people to work together, to put in people, to bring the change that we need. Because if things get much worse, and that's very likely, the people at the bottom of the heap will suffer the most. That's where Māori are. The wealthy can insulate themselves from the effects of what's happening, but low-income families can't. They just suffer. So this is a time for change. Why not lead the change instead of just suffering from it? You are Ngāti Kahungunu. You came out of this land. You belong to it. You take the lead. And I'm not joking, you know. Bad people need to do things. It's for good people to sit on their backsides and do nothing. You know, and we've just got to say, hey, we're not happy with this, so we are going to change it. And with the numbers, you've got the power to do that.
Kia ora tēnā koe. Do we have any pātai for Pa McGowen?
Is that a nomination?
No, the thing is bad. You know, you don't want old farts getting up there because we go to sleep during meetings. No, the thing is, look, you've got people amongst yourselves, eh? Pick out the best people and put them forward. You know, I mean, and stop criticising each other. Nobody's perfect. You know, when you're sort of, you know, not in the limelight, you're wonderful. As soon as you get into the hot seat, everybody sees your faults. And that's destructive. You know, if someone's standing for an important position, what you say to them, can you take the knocks? Can you take the criticism? Can you take the stabbing in the back? You know, I mean, that's what in actual fact stops a lot of people, and that's what destroys some of our best people. You know, who needs enemies when you've got relations? You know, so the thing about it is, hey, we just, I mean, those are games we play when everything's going well. You know, we're hearing about that the hidden voice. The land is not actually whispering more, it's crying. We've really and truly got to take notice to what the land is saying. Heal me, because I'm your mother, and I'm becoming so sick I can't look after you much longer. That's the message. Anyway, thank you, people.
Kia ora, tēnā koe Pā McGowen, tēnā rawa atu koe.